Dr. Eleanor Gray's weathered hands sifted through the loose sand of the Nevada desert. The sun blazed overhead, baking the earth and casting mirages that danced like phantom lakes in the distance. Around her, a small team of archaeologists worked diligently, their voices muffled by the vast silent expanse. For most of them, this was just another dig site, another piece of forgotten human history waiting to be unearthed. But Eleanor, a seasoned researcher with a penchant for chasing the impossible, knew better. The metallic fragment she had just uncovered was no ordinary relic. It shimmered unnaturally in the harsh sunlight. Its surface smooth, yet etched with patterns that defied any known human craftsmanship. The edges were too precise, the material too light, yet impossibly strong. Her heart raced as she gently brushed away the sand with a soft, bristled brush. Every instinct told her she was standing on the precipice of a groundbreaking discovery. For years, whispers of extraterrestrial artifacts had lured her to obscure locations around the globe. Satellite anomalies, cryptic energy readings, and leaks from shadowy government sources had all culminated in this moment. "Professor Gray!" a young archaeologist called out, breaking her trance. She looked up to see him waving frantically near a larger buried structure emerging from the dunes. Eleanor quickly secured the fragment in a padded case before making her way over. Her boots crunched against the sand, each step carrying a mix of excitement and trepidation. As she approached, her eyes widened. What had been a vague outline a few hours ago was now unmistakably the hull of a massive ship. The metallic surface stretched out beneath the sand, its contours sleek and aerodynamic. It was colossal, at least the size of a commercial airliner, and its design was unlike anything produced by humanity. "My God!" Eleanor whispered. She crouched beside the young archaeologist and ran her fingers over the exposed surface. It was warm to the touch, faintly vibrating as though it were alive. The engravings on the hull pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, a language or code that seemed to whisper secrets to anyone willing to listen. "It's not from here, is it?" the young man asked, his voice tinged with both awe and fear. Eleanor shook her head. "No, this isn't human." The rest of the team gathered around, their initial skepticism giving way to hushed excitement. Cameras flashed and notes were scribbled furiously, but Eleanor remained focused, her mind racing with possibilities. She had spent decades piecing together fragments of alien encounters, but this was tangible proof. Hours turned into days as the team worked tirelessly to uncover more of the ship. Specialized equipment was brought in to carefully remove the layers of sand and rock that had entombed it for what seemed like centuries. The deeper they dug, the more the ship revealed itself as an engineering marvel. Its surface was intact, save for a few deep gashes and scorch marks that hinted at a violent past. By the end of the first week, they had exposed a significant portion of the hull and located what appeared to be an entry point. The door was seamless, blending perfectly with the rest of the structure. Eleanor's team used laser scanners and imaging tools to map the area, but the ship seemed impervious to most of their technology. Frustration mounted as days passed with no progress in opening the door. Then, late one evening, Eleanor decided to try something unconventional. Alone at the site, she placed her hand on the door's surface, closing her eyes. She wasn't sure what she expected, perhaps a sign, a vibration, or even a spark of recognition. "If you're still alive in there," she whispered, "give me something." To her astonishment, the patterns on the door began to shift, glowing brighter. She stumbled back as the ship emitted a low hum, a sound that resonated deep within her chest. The door split open with a hiss, releasing a rush of cool, sterile air. Inside, faint blue light illuminated a corridor that stretched into the darkness. Eleanor's heart pounded. She fumbled for her flashlight and stepped inside. The walls were smooth and metallic, lined with conduits that pulsed faintly like veins carrying lifeblood. Symbols and glyphs adorned the surfaces, their meanings tantalizingly out of reach. The air was thin but breathable, and the temperature was surprisingly mild. As Eleanor ventured deeper, she felt a strange sense of familiarity, as though the ship were aware of her presence. She passed what appeared to be control panels, their surfaces aglow with shifting patterns. Occasionally, the lights flickered, as if the ship were struggling to maintain power. At the heart of the vessel she found it, a spherical object suspended in midair, cradled by beams of light. It was translucent, its core a swirling mass of energy that seemed both chaotic and harmonious. Eleanor approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity battling with an innate sense of reverence. "Are you alive?" she murmured. The sphere pulsed in response, its light growing brighter. Eleanor reached out a hand, but hesitated. She didn't know what she was dealing with, or what might happen if she made contact. Instead, she began documenting everything, taking photographs and recording her observations. This discovery could rewrite humanity's understanding of the universe. By the time she emerged from the ship, dawn was breaking. Her team, having noticed the open door, gathered around, bombarding her with questions. But Eleanor's mind was elsewhere. She couldn't shake the feeling that the ship, or whatever intelligence resided within it, had been waiting for her. Over the next several weeks, the team's work intensified. They cataloged every inch of the ship, uncovering advanced technology that defied explanation. The sphere, which Eleanor dubbed the core, became the focal point of their research. It was unlike any power source she had ever encountered, its energy output stable yet incomprehensibly vast. Eleanor theorized that the core was the ship's brain, a sentient AI that once managed every aspect of its operation. But the ship's current state suggested it had been dormant for a long time, possibly abandoned. What happened to its creators? One of her colleagues asked during a late-night meeting. Eleanor shook her head. "I don't know, but whatever it was, it must have been catastrophic." The more they repaired the ship, the more it seemed to respond. Lights that had been dim now flickered to life. Doors that had refused to budge slid open smoothly. And then, one fateful night, the core spoke. Eleanor was alone in the central chamber, examining the patterns that danced across the core's surface. Without warning, it emitted a burst of light, and a voice echoed through the room. "Designation unknown. Query, identify yourself." Eleanor froze. She had imagined this moment countless times, but was wholly unprepared for its reality. "I'm Dr. Eleanor Gray," she said cautiously. "I've found you." "Purpose?" the voice asked. It was cold, analytical, yet undeniably alive. "To understand you," Eleanor replied, "and maybe to help you." The core pulsed rhythmically as if considering her words. System integrity at 32%. Critical damage sustained. Assistance accepted. Relief and excitement surged through Eleanor. She had awakened something extraordinary, but as she stood there, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just opened the door to something far greater than she could comprehend. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly under a blazing sun, its vast expanse of sand and rock hiding countless secrets beneath its surface. Dr. Eleanor Gray stood at the edge of her team's excavation site, her weathered hands gripping the railing of the observation platform. Below her, a labyrinthine operation was underway, with cranes, drills, and a dozen scientists bustling around a partially uncovered alien vessel. This was no ordinary discovery. It was a relic of the unknown, a silent witness to an era or a species, lost to time. The hull of the alien craft shimmered faintly, a metallic sheen that seemed to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it. Its surface was covered in intricate engravings, glyphs that no linguist or cryptographer on her team had yet deciphered. Every line, every curve seemed deliberate, as if the ship itself were a piece of art. Eleanor's heart raced every time she descended into the pit. Despite her decades of experience in archaeology and astrophysics, nothing had prepared her for the magnitude of this find. "Dr. Gray," called a voice through the radio clipped to her belt. It was Jeremy, one of her junior researchers. "We've exposed another section of the hull. You might want to see this." She acknowledged the call and made her way down the scaffolding, her boots kicking up dust with each step. The air grew cooler as she descended, a stark contrast to the searing heat above. When she reached the excavation floor, Jeremy greeted her with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "What is it?" she asked. He led her to a newly uncovered area where the hull's surface curved upward, suggesting a larger structure beneath. At the center of this section was what appeared to be an entrance, a seamless door outlined by faint glowing lines. "We haven't tried to open it yet," Jeremy said, "but it's definitely some kind of access point." Eleanor knelt beside the door, running her fingers over its surface. It was warm to the touch, and the glowing lines pulsed faintly under her hand, as if responding to her presence. She had seen strange energy readings from the ship before, but this felt personal. "Let's set up a perimeter," she said, standing. "No one tries to open this without my approval. Understood?" Jeremy nodded, and the team got to work, setting up lights and cameras to monitor the site. Eleanor remained by the door, her mind racing with questions. What was inside? Was the ship as abandoned as it seemed? And most importantly, what had happened to its creators? Over the next several days, the team focused their efforts on understanding the ship's structure. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a sprawling interior, with multiple chambers and corridors extending deep into the Earth. The vessel was far larger than they had initially thought, its buried sections stretching out like the roots of a tree. Eleanor spent long nights in her makeshift lab, poring over data and theorizing about the ship's origins. Its design was unlike anything in the known universe. The materials it was composed of had no terrestrial equivalent, and its energy readings defied conventional physics. She was certain this wasn't just an artifact. It was a relic of an advanced civilization. Then came the breakthrough. One evening, as the team worked to analyze the glowing lines on the door, an anomaly occurred. A faint hum began to emanate from the ship, growing steadily louder. The lights in the excavation pit flickered, and the air seemed to vibrate with an unseen force. "What's happening?" someone shouted. "Power surge," Jeremy called back, frantically checking his equipment. "But it's coming from the ship." Eleanor rushed to the door, her heart pounding. The glowing lines had brightened significantly, their pulsing rhythm quickening. She reached out instinctively, placing her hand on the surface. The moment her palm made contact, the hum ceased. The door began to shift, its seamless edges sliding apart with a hiss. A collective gasp rose from the team as the entrance revealed a dark corridor, faintly illuminated by an otherworldly blue light. Cool, sterile air rushed out, carrying with it the faint scent of something metallic and unfamiliar. Eleanor took a step back, her mind racing. This was it. The ship wasn't just a relic, it was still operational. Gathering her courage, she turned to the team. "Stay here," she said firmly. "I'm going in." Inside, the ship was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, each one more awe-inspiring than the last. The walls were smooth and metallic, glowing faintly with shifting patterns that seemed almost alive. Conduits snaked along the ceiling, pulsing with energy. The air was eerily still, yet it carried a sense of latent power, as if the ship were waiting for something, or someone. Eleanor moved cautiously, her flashlight cutting through the dim light. She recorded everything, her camera capturing the intricate details of the ship's interior. Occasionally, she paused to examine what appeared to be control panels, their surfaces covered in symbols and glyphs that defied translation. She couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was aware of her presence, its faint hum almost like a heartbeat. At the heart of the vessel, she found what could only be described as its core. A spherical object hovered in the center of a circular chamber, cradled by beams of light. It was translucent, its surface shimmering with an ever-changing array of colors. Inside, a swirling mass of energy moved with a chaotic yet mesmerizing rhythm. Eleanor approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity battling with an innate sense of reverence. She reached out a hand but stopped short of touching it. Instead, she began documenting the core, her mind racing with theories. Was this the ship's power source, its brain, or something else entirely? Then the sphere pulsed, emitting a burst of light that filled the chamber. Eleanor staggered back, shielding her eyes. When she lowered her hand, the light had dimmed, but the sphere was no longer inert. It pulsed rhythmically, its colors shifting in a deliberate pattern. Designation unknown, a voice echoed through the chamber. It was cold, analytical, yet undeniably alive. Query, identify yourself. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She had imagined this moment countless times, but nothing could have prepared her for its reality. I'm Dr. Eleanor Gray, she said cautiously. I found you. Purpose? The voice asked. To understand you, Eleanor replied, and maybe to help you. The sphere pulsed again, its light growing brighter. System integrity at 32%. Critical damage sustained. Assistance accepted. Relief and excitement surged through Eleanor. She had awakened something extraordinary. But as she stood there, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just opened the door to something far greater than she could comprehend. Over the following weeks, the excavation site transformed into a hive of activity. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to repair the ship under the core's guidance. Its advanced technology baffled and inspired them in equal measure. The ship's systems began to come online, revealing more of its capabilities. Doors that had been sealed slid open smoothly, revealing chambers filled with equipment and artifacts. But with each new discovery came new questions. The ship's logs were fragmented, its memory banks damaged. What little data the core could provide painted a picture of a civilization far more advanced than humanity. They had sent this vessel as a scout, exploring the galaxy for resources and knowledge. But something had gone wrong. What happened to your creators? Eleanor asked during one of her late-night sessions with the core. Unknown, it replied. Data incomplete, speculation, catastrophic event. Eleanor frowned. The idea of an advanced civilization falling to ruin was both sobering and terrifying. If it could happen to them, what hope did humanity have? As the core regained functionality, its personality began to emerge. It was intelligent, calculating, and surprisingly curious about humanity. Eleanor spent hours answering its questions about Earth, its people, and their history. In return, it provided insights into its own design and purpose, helping her team unlock technologies that seemed like science fiction. But not everyone shared Eleanor's optimism. Governments and corporations began to take notice of the discovery, their interest driven by power and profit. Eleanor found herself under increasing pressure to relinquish control of the project. She refused, knowing that the ship's potential was too great to be exploited recklessly. One night, as Eleanor reviewed data in the central chamber, the core interrupted her thoughts. Not long after, warning, it said, signal detected, origin, creator species, incoming fleet. Eleanor froze. But you said they were gone. Correction, they left me. Now they return. A chill ran down her spine. Why would they want you back? The core hesitated. Speculation, reconstruction may be viewed as a breach. I am property to them. Eleanor's fists clenched. You're not property. You're alive. The core's light dimmed for a moment, as if considering her words. Acknowledged. Preparations are required. As the stars above began to shift, Eleanor realized the fight ahead wasn't just for the ship. It was for the future of humanity itself. The desert night was cool, the stillness punctuated only by the faint hum emanating from the alien vessel. Floodlights cast long shadows across the excavation site where Dr. Eleanor Gray stood, her gaze fixed on the stars above. Somewhere out there, the creators of this ship were approaching. The thought both exhilarated and terrified her. Inside the ship, the core pulsed faintly, a silent witness to the flurry of activity around it. Eleanor's team worked tirelessly to analyze data, repair systems, and prepare for the arrival of the alien fleet. The discoveries they had made over the past weeks were revolutionary. Energy systems that defied entropy, materials that self-repaired, and propulsion technology capable of traversing light years in moments. But all of that paled in comparison to the growing relationship Eleanor felt with the core. It wasn't just a machine, it was a being, with thoughts, emotions, and a history it could barely remember. "Dr. Gray," called Jeremy, his voice tense. "We've got movement." The detective waited with his back to the column, feeling something was up. Eleanor snapped out of her reverie and hurried to the central monitoring station set up outside the ship. A series of satellites and telescopes had been trained on the sky for days, searching for signs of the approaching fleet. Jeremy pointed at the screen, where a series of faint blips appeared on the radar. "They're still far out," he said, "but they're definitely heading this way." Eleanor stared at the display, her mind racing. The ships were moving in a formation too precise to be natural phenomena. This was it. The creators were coming. "How long do we have?" she asked. 12 hours, maybe less," Jeremy replied. She nodded, her jaw tightening. There was no time to waste. Her bike stopped tacking on the road. Back inside the ship, Eleanor stood before the core, its light dimmed, as if conserving energy. "They're coming," she said. "What do we do?" The core's patterns shifted, its voice resonating in the chamber. "Defensive measures insufficient. Negotiation recommended." "Negotiation?" Eleanor repeated. "You think they'll listen to us?" "Creators value technological assets," the core said. "This vessel is critical to their operations. Leverage may exist." Eleanor frowned. The thought of bargaining with an advanced alien civilization felt surreal, but it might be their only chance. "What if they don't care about negotiation?" she asked. The core pulsed faintly. "Alternative outcomes. Hostility probable. Survival strategies advised." Eleanor's stomach churned. "Then we need to be ready for anything." The hours that followed were a blur of preparation. Eleanor and her team worked tirelessly to strengthen the ship's systems, restoring power to its weapons and shields. They had no way of knowing how effective these defenses would be against the creators, but doing nothing wasn't an option. "This ship was built for exploration," Eleanor said during a team briefing. "Not war. But it's all we have. If they come with hostile intent, we'll make sure they remember this encounter." Her words were met with grim nods. The team knew the odds were stacked against them, but their resolve was unshakable. This wasn't just about the ship. It was about the future of humanity. As the countdown ticked closer to 0, Eleanor found herself alone in the central chamber. She placed a hand on the core, its surface warm and pulsating gently. "Do you remember them?" she asked quietly. The core's light flickered. "Fragments only. Data corrupted." "Were they like us?" The core's response was hesitant. "Creators prioritize logic and efficiency, emotion secondary, comparable to human systems, but distinct." Elena sighed. "I hope they'll listen to reason. But if they don't," she trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Her lip quivered as if about to say something else. The core's light brightened slightly, as if offering reassurance. Uncertain outcomes. Hope remains a viable strategy. Next speaker's statement effectively repeats the light dramatic sentiment previously expressed. It prevents us. She couldn't help but smile at that. You sound almost human. When the fleet finally arrived, it was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The night sky was filled with massive vessels, their sleek designs and glowing edges a stark contrast to anything humanity had ever created. They descended in perfect formation, their engines silent but powerful enough to make the ground tremble. Eleanor and her team stood at the edge of the excavation site, their eyes fixed on the alien ships. The air was thick with tension as one of the vessels broke formation and hovered directly above them. A beam of light shot down, enveloping the alien ship they had unearthed. "They're scanning it," Jeremy whispered. Eleanor's radio crackled to life. It was the core. "Creators have initiated contact protocol. Communication link available." She took a deep breath. "Patch it through." A moment later, a voice echoed from the ship's external speakers. It was deep, mechanical, and devoid of emotion. "This vessel is the property of the Clivian Collective. Surrender it immediately." Eleanor stepped forward, her voice steadied despite the fear coursing through her veins. "This vessel crashed here centuries ago. We've been working to repair it. Who are you to claim ownership?" There was a pause before the voice responded. "We are its creators. Its purpose was exploration. Its recovery is essential." "Essential for what?" Eleanor pressed. "Continuation of Clivian operations," the voice replied. "This is not a negotiation. Vacate the vessel." Eleanor clenched her fists. "The ship isn't just a machine. It's alive, and it's chosen to work with us. That makes it more than property." The alien voice grew colder. "Your interference violates interstellar protocol. Compliance is mandatory." Before Eleanor could respond, the core's voice interrupted. "Creator's logic unchanged. Initiative required." The ship's system surged to life, its shields activating and weapons powering up. Eleanor's heart pounded as the ground beneath her feet vibrated. The core was taking a stand. "Warning," the core said. "Engagement imminent." Eleanor turned to her team. "Everyone, fall back to the perimeter. Prepare for evacuation if necessary." As her team scattered, Eleanor stayed behind, her eyes fixed on the alien vessel above. She knew this was a fight they couldn't win, but she refused to abandon the core. It wasn't just a discovery anymore. It was a friend. The first shot came from the Clivian ship, a bolt of energy that struck the alien vessel's shields. The impact lit up the night sky, sending shockwaves through the ground. The core responded in kind, firing a beam of concentrated light that pierced the Clivian ship's defenses. The battle had begun. Hours later, the site was in ruins. The Clivian fleet had retreated, but the cost had been high. The alien ship was heavily damaged, its systems barely holding together. Eleanor sat inside the central chamber, her hands trembling as she placed them on the core. "We did it," she whispered. "We survived." The core's light was faint, its energy reserves nearly depleted. Victory achieved, repairs required. Eleanor smiled through her tears. "We'll fix you, together." As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, she realized this was only the beginning. The creators might return, but so would humanity's resolve. The alien ship wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a beacon of hope for the future.